let me hold your hand. Sister, darling, let me hold you close. Don't be afraid, I will sail the waves of you. Sister, darling, sister, darling, sister, darling.
Hi, good morning. My name is Felicity Mudis and I would like to welcome you to this month's episode of the Sister Darling podcast. Thank you so much for always joining us, or always subscribing, sharing our work, listening in and sharing with all your friends and all the women that you feel need to hear about this. On this month's episode, we are so excited to be bringing to you a powerhouse, a thought leader, a feminist, and an inspiration to so many of us women across all generations. Please, introducing Easter Okech, everybody. Hi, Easter.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness. This has been long overdue. It's so nice to actually be sitting across from you. We appreciate you creating time to just hang out with us and the rest of the sisters and just have, sisterly conversations. So please, me na John Akujua, in all the hats that you wear, so many hats, but I know that other ladies would like to get to know you as well. So please introduce yourself.
Let me talk about, what Easter does.
Yes.
I work with an organization called Kenya Female Advisory Organization, KEFEADO. I've been in KEFEADO since I was a young person. Now 30 years, KEFEADO is now 30 years old, so I've been there for about 25 years.
Wow.
And the work that I do has been amazing in terms of the work that KEFEADO does. We work on issues of engaging young people in learning institutions to understand their agency and also then engaging within the spaces where they are, but also engage their communities and their parents at the household level, because that is when you'll be able to deal with the issues which children face or learners face in and out of school. Community empowerment work has also been a critical part of the work that we do, to look at how community members have civic knowledge on what their rights are and how then they have responsibilities. So part of it is looking at issues of budgets. So currently in Kenya, the issues of budget is also very interesting to look at, but also see how budgets work for you. And also having knowledge in terms of what are your legal rights and how then you can participate in leadership. So we have managed through the years to also ensure that we train young women and also women with disability and also older women to be part of political leadership spaces, because then it influences the work we do. But all this cannot happen if you don't do collaborative initiatives with other people. So we are also very key that in the work that we do, that we also collaborate and engage with other people in the spaces where we are to push a common agenda. Yes.
Wow, I told you people, she does wear so many hats, and I love the fact that, as you work around KEFEADO, most of your work is so intergenerational and intersectional, and that's something that we struggle with, especially with the young movements, because we're like, I'm specifically going to be working with these people of this age or these people in this particular sphere. What has, inspired you to just be able to ensure that your work is as diverse as it is?
One of this, it is because we come from an African context, and in an African context, there are very positive cultural values which ensure that there was intergenerational engagement. And in the context of the African culture, let me talk about the context of the low cultural practice where I come from. There were spaces where older people, both male and female, would engage with younger people. There was the issues of transition into age sets. You could not transit in another age set before you pulled in another age set. So part of it is that when you look at our own positive cultural values, which talks about inclusion, where people were not left behind or left out. So those are the spaces. So in the lower cultural practice, when you look at engaging with younger women or adolescents, older women had a space called Siwinde. And at the Siwinde, you'd be able to talk about a myriad of things, which sometimes we find difficult talking about now. Yet we talked about issues of sexual reproductive health and rights, what you need to do at different levels, on how to engage in your own leadership. Those were talked about at that particular space. And also boys and men had their duels. So part of it is that the duel was a space where men also were engaging. So when we look at all these positive values which we have, it existed in our culture. So what we are doing is just to pick what already existed and then transform it into the current your cultural beliefs and practices which we have now, and then utilize it to hold those particular spaces.
And I think that's so powerful because I think we have been in a space where we look at our cultures like things that we need to abandon and like, you know, very barbaric things. So to actually be able to harness part of those things to use them in organizing, I think that that's very powerful, and the community is also able to relate with that, because if you bring up Sibinde, someone is like, so that is it. My grandmother or my great-grandmother mentioned something around the same thing. So it becomes so much more easier for us to be in touch with our communities and with our people. They feel like they are part of the movement and part of the work that you're doing, and that is very beautiful. You know, you spoke about her working with girls and women with disability. I'd really like to just, you know, hear more on why you felt that that's necessary, because disability and inclusion is something that yes, there's improvement, but a lot of work needs to be done. Why did KEFEADO feel like that was a necessary step to take?
We always say the personal is very political, and your lived experiences shapes how you look at different things. So I'll talk about my own personal story of a time when I was unwell, and when I was unwell at that particular time, I actually got temporary disability, and it taught me so many things about accessibility, how you are left out of certain things, how the community around you do not see you in certain spaces, or you are ignored. So that is why when you're looking at your own personal experience, it is very important that as you look at that personal experience, you're able to then engage at that particular level. And then we are able to then think about that after the personal. You also see communities and the people who are often left out. So when you look at what we talk about constantly in terms of, we talk about our personal is political, when you're talking about the issues of African feminism, it is also very important that as we engage, we look at who do you leave out. So intersectionality means that all facets of the people who we engage with must be included. If you leave them behind, they are not part of the space. And we work to ensure that they speak for themselves. That is the urgency. So when people are speaking for themselves, then they participate, they have their own voices. So that is where we talk about giving power to, and ensuring that the power within these particular persons is engaged. So we are not only speaking for people.
I love that, because in so many organizings, you just assume that, you know, this is what this person would need, this is what this person would say. So I really honestly feel that that's very powerful, and that's really beautiful. And, you know, like you've already spoken about African feminism as you were talking about this. And feminism has been defined by so many people in so many different ways. And so many other people have been at war with feminism, but I'd just like to just hear from you, what does African feminism mean to you as a person? Because that's what you identify as, yeah?
Yes. We, as an African feminist, we look at the issue of where we are also identifying that within our own spaces, as women of color and women who come from the continent of Africa, there were things which were affirming and ensured that you could participate, which ensured that patriarchy, which we keep on talking about, was not affecting how we engaged at different levels. So in terms of the issues of the cultural practice of where we are, we also stated that there were also women who pushed agendas long before we started talking about the issues of feminism from the white context. So when you look at the people who then, in terms of their leadership, pushed the agenda and were there for women where they were. Even when you look at the women who came from the different spaces, strong women, like let's say in Kenya, we keep on talking about Wangari Maathai, but I'll talk about my own mother, who ensured that one, in our household, everybody was equal. Everybody had chores. So it meant that everybody cooked, plus my brothers. Everybody washed plates like everybody else. But she got this from her own mother, let us say. So our own mother ensured that because she was the only girl, that everybody in their household were cooking at the time when she was born. So it means that the pushing of the barriers is that it happened in terms of at different levels with different people. And it is important for us to also remember these women from the African context who have held homes and ensured that people have done different things at the different levels. So it's already existed. It's just that we have not documented the stories of African women who have been able to change the agenda, who have been able to ensure that homes and their leadership protected their families, and how then communities have also grown. We have looked at how the Chama system has ensured that households are sustained. That is what we call now, we call it African, the feminist economies. But at that particular level, they have participated at their own level and gotten the power to decide how their household will live, how they will enable themselves to do the things that they want without challenges. Yes.
Absolutely. And like, what do you think are some of the most important African feminist principles that need to be remembered and adhered to like every single time?
The one thing which we talk about is we have the issue of the you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yes.
We always tell people that the issues of self-care came when you are told to rest, and you'd rest when you are doing different things at different levels. And that is why when you look at even within our different spaces, the culture of women sitting together and even doing your hair, and that was a part on which when people were doing their hair, that was their space to engage in. We look at the issue of the context of where our issues of bodily autonomy and issues of nudity was not a challenge to us, where your body agency was not frowned upon. And right now with different things, that is when now you're being told that your body needs to look this way. And yet plus size persons were people who are recognized in our economy, and no one body shamed people. So when we look at how then we are engaging, the issues of inclusion, the issues of bringing people, the issues of ensuring that you covered somebody's shame, for example. One of the clear things of when you look at how people built economies is that getting salt was something which then you are told that when you say that that household did not have salt, and people just brought that, oh, I had just a little extra. Oh, I just had some extra food, yes, so that I'm bringing to cover you and to hold your spirit. Those are things which in the context of when now we are talking about solidarity, about humanity, was done long ago in African context. And how women worked with each other to ensure that you are supported in all stages of your rites of passage. So that is part of the things which we are looking at when you're saying that how do we want African feminism to work? It already worked. We supported each other without having to say that that person was being supported.
This is so beautiful. It's just, I think it's lovely how you are drawing your entire feminist beliefs and the entire feminist system from where we come from as a people. It becomes so much easier for everybody else to be able to identify with, because it's not something foreign. Because you realize how so many times we are being told that feminism tuliletewa, it's a white man thing, it's a white woman thing. But like to be able to draw inspiration from the experiences of our own people, our own mothers, and that is something that everybody should be able to relate to. You know, as you're talking, and I'm thinking about my grandmothers, I'm thinking about my mother, I'm thinking about the women in my community, I'm thinking about the kind of solidarity and just the togetherness that we have had so many times and so far, and I'm like, so that is actually feminism just without the name. Exactly. Just without the name itself. I think that that's really nice. And then we just recently saw a Pan-Africanist conference, and the first poster that was out did not even actually have any Africans. Of course. but we had a Pan-Africanist conference coming to Nairobi just recently after the APRO. They changed it a little bit and, included a few speakers. The women weren't also many, the black women that were in that poster. It was just majority of men, and it was a conference on family values. And if you're being honest, language has been used. It's now like a weapon in so many ways. Like things that meant this are actually being transformed to mean something completely different. And you may be getting behind an agenda without actually realizing, oh, that is actually shady, because you hear family and you're like, oh, I'm pro-family, I'm definitely for that. So why not be part of that? But with that, we saw that APRO, and you actually also declared your stand on this theme. Like, what do you think about this whole entire anti-rights movement?
When people want to control a community, there are many things they brought in very subtle ways. For For example, when people are colonized, they will come in very nice spaces. We talked about religion being used as a form of oppression.
Yes.
And one of the things is that when you look at the new forms of oppression, it comes in that bit of what defines what family is. And when you look at the context, it is very confined to a certain prism of what family is. So if you're out of that particular prism, if you're a single woman, you're not family, for example. If you're a single man, you're not in the well definition of what a nice family looks like. So part of it is the pushback, which then is required. Because in terms of our African context, you'd never even know which child belonged to who at a different level. But we should not then define people because that if you do not behave in this particular manner, then you're not in the right context of what a family is. So it is also important to look at our own context in the African space on what sexuality was and how then sexuality was defined, and then not having only one prism. Or when we talk about the issues of sexual rights and also the issues of sexuality. So when we look at how we want to engage, I think it is also important not to say that certain things came by ship, because historically we know very well that in the issues of our own context of sexuality, people had different types of how they express themselves and different orientations. And it is important to have these particular conversations from the context in Africa. And then when we look at also within the Kenya space where we are, that context of also defining means that it's exclusionary, that only certain people in that community will be included in the different spaces of how family is supposed to look like. And that is discriminatory and is against the Constitution. But when we look at how people want to slip in different things at different levels and probably use political spaces to then push agendas, Kenya itself is not looking at any religious value. You can recognize that people have different religions, but we are not a religious state. So when you look at our beats, the Constitution is very clear that we are not a religious state. So when these things keep on coming and we see attempts to ensure that we sneak in different things at different levels, then we should be very awoke and ensure that we do not turn our beautiful nation into certain things which then are not progressive to the communities where we come from. And part of it is that when you look at then the exclusion, as you say, that how many women were sitting there. So it also tells you that when we are pushing certain very religious connotations, we talk about how Christianity was, Puritanism then ensured that all women were relegated to some corner, and you are relegated to your issues of your own sexuality, you are boxed into certain things. So we are looking at things which then when they come into where we are at, will push us back ages where there was the lack of authority over your body, and those things came where in African context, women were very free with how they were with their bodies, right? They were able to decide. When people talked about even the religious, we talk about even family planning. Family planning did not come with the sheep. In the Luo cultural practice, you are told you can only get another child if the child you had reached your knee. It means that child was walking, and it meant that those particular spaces which then ensure that you did not get another child until your child was walking was part of sexual reproductive health and rights. So someone cannot start telling us that we were not aware about our body rights, we're not aware of our autonomy, and that you can only box it in certain spaces. So we really need to think about how that will affect access to services in an age where children and adolescents are at an all-time high of having unintended and unintended pregnancies, and also the rising cases of HIV amongst adolescents and young people.
I love how you have captured that, and I don't think so many of us have actually looked at it like the second phase of colonization, you know. But then, as you were explaining it, it's apparent. It's what it just is. Exactly that, and I think that it's very beautiful that within the feminist movement and the allyship that there is therein, there was a lot of pushback on the same. Like, I love how aware people are at this point. It's not just a matter of things will catch you by surprise, as it did back in the day.
Yes.
People are actually very careful to interrogate a lot of these things that are being brought our way, and I think that that's a very necessary and a very timely thing, yeah? I love that you have mentioned children, and I want us to get a little bit into one of the programs that KEFEADO runs, the Orange Wednesdays.
Yes.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
The Orange Wednesday started during 16 days. That is 2014. During the 16 days of gender activism, at that time there was the bit of the theme was Orange Your World.
Yeah.
And during the Orange Your World, there were a lot of issues on the issues of prevention of sexual violence against children. And in Kisumu, where we are, at that particular time, there was a story in Kondele roundabout which said that children it was Bamba 10, or Chips Me Too, that for 10 shillings, children were having sexual relations to have food. So part of it is that the poverty and the dignity of children was being lowered at that particular space. So part of what the Orange Wednesday, when you're talking about Orange World, was to ensure that we are particularly working towards ensuring children are not exposed to transactional sex at such a young age, and they can be protected. So the Orange Wednesdays is also meant for children who are experiencing violence at different levels to be able to have a space to get to know how they can protect themselves and how then they can utilize the spaces within schools and out of schools to speak about their experiences with different people. It teaches children to also get to know that a perpetrator can be anyone, because always we tell children stories, the issues of storytelling. The villain in the story is always someone who has a persona, aggressive, type of person who looks attacking and very threatening. But we have had very nice looking people who are perpetrators. So part of this is that we teach children through art to get to know that anyone can be a perpetrator. And within your households, within the schools, how do you then ensure when there's inappropriate behavior, when there's bad touch, even a look, even a conversation on the street when you're walking. So that is what the Orange Wednesdays does, so that the streets are safe for children, because adolescent girls and even boys now are experiencing a lot of harassment along the street at a certain age, when those catcalls happen to them along the street or even within the schools. So part of it is that is where the conversation started, so that children are aware, but that support must come from their guardians and their parents within the schools, so that this conversation is not a conversation which is had by civil society. It's a household conversation. It's a personal conversation which is owned within families, and that children can be able to have safe spaces to engage. Yes.
Wow, that is, you'll agree with me, it's very necessary. And I love how you're talking about just having these conversations with them and letting them know also what abuse looks like, because so many children actually get violated, but they do not know, especially in the cases of grooming. They do not know that that was actually violation. Someone grows up and later on in the future is when they're like, oh yeah, so I was actually assaulted when that and that happened to me. So I think that it's very beautiful that you're actually letting them know that, and just letting them know that they have power over their bodies. You know, the thing about being a child is you'll be told, hug so and so, or say hi to them, and share the bed with that visitor, and you're not comfortable doing it, but nobody actually wants to hear it. And so it's powerful to actually be able to give power to their voices and have the involvement of their parents and their guardians in the same, so that it's not just we told the children, but their parents actually also are aware, and so they're able to just create a more safer world and homes for their kids. And so back to where we began on just economic empowerment as well. And I love the work that you're doing. It's so intersectional. You're literally covering every single facet of life in itself. But you recently launched a project on the blue economy as KEFEADO. What does that entail?
The blue economy is a space where we are looking at how people can utilize resources which are within your community to empower yourself economically and also socially. So within the blue economy, one of the things that we've done is that a lot of work happens in the lake. So the lake is a resource. So when we look at the lake and the resource, and one of the things is that the lake is, first of all, we say that out of the blue economy, from our feminist space, the lake is a woman, and the woman is supposed to be productive.
Yes.
And when it's supposed to be productive, the children who are supposed to be benefit from this lake should come from the communities around here, because they nurture that particular lake. So the blue economy courses are supposed to be helping different community members to participate in processes in the lake as people who utilize the resources within the lake, but ensure that these people who include beach management the beach management units within the lake, but also apart from the BMUs, are also the women who work within the lake to prevent the issues of violence which they face within the lake. But the opportunities which are here are also through the education system. In that, when you are looking at how then we can conserve and utilize the lake optimally, it requires us to have certain skills. A number of times when you talk about exploitation, all these skills used to be foreign. People would come from different spaces to do work, which then local communities, if well trained and engaged, would be able to work on. So let's talk about even issues of aquaculture, for example, the development of the issues of boats. We have wonderful artists who are able to develop good boats, which we see on the lake. So how then do we want to ensure that that type of economy is supported by people who are able to train? So when now we are saying that we want to ensure that we are training people on boat making, on using fiberglass as a boat, why should we go to another country, and yet we already have skilled people who can produce boats? All they have to do is to be recognized that they've been able to do this kind of work, and that they can even train younger people to be able to develop the new boats with even new materials. So that sort of knowledge is what we are looking at harnessing within the spaces where we are. We look at the issues of even how women were in the people who used to do nets, for example. Why are we importing then nets from China? If then we can have materials, which then if we know that the knowledge which already we have that we can produce, then we'll not have any discriminative bits that this is what women can do and this is what men can do, because they already did it at a point in time. And that we look at how then courses which are like electrical work, the issues of plumbing, cannot be said that the women or young women can only do tailoring, isn't it? Both men and women can also do tailoring. We look at a process in which we ensure that we are not having skewed thoughts that this is what women can do traditionally, only that you can do for certain courses like hairdressing, but we have that all the people who do hair are usually male. So breaking those perceptions is what this blue economy courses, which then are offered within the certain TVETs in the different counties where we work, in Busia, Siaya, Kisumu, and Homa Bay, are able to engage on. And to ensure that once they are engaging in that particular space, they are able to then come out and get work. So how do you then also link them to different market actors who then can also utilize those skills at different levels? So those linkages in terms of market actors, engaging young people who might have dropped out of school and do not think they can complete their education to come back and then get skills, and those skills can enable them to do different things with their lives. That is something which is interesting for us to see, because then you get a whole ecosystem which then different people are able to have work which is considered decent work. And the work is not only decent but fulfilling to the person who is doing it. So part of our work is to ensure that young people within these particular spaces can engage in spaces which we call have decent and fulfilling work. Yes.
Beautiful, that's beautiful. So you've talked about 25 years of doing this work. It must get exhausting at some point.
Yes. The good thing about, I think what it is that our work also means that you meet different people at different times. And we believe in sisterhood. That is why the African feminist space works for me. In terms of sisterhood is that you get people who will tell you it is time to rest. And part of self-care is that you're able to say that you want to put it down because you can't pour from an empty cup. So part of sisterhood is that we have different institutions who we work with. So at different levels we are able to engage. But it is also important to look at a mentorship model so that you're not the one who is carrying all the weight. So who do you mentor? Who do you work with? I was mentored to be here in terms of the work I did. I started also as a young person within my institution. So I was mentored by my late mother, who was the executive director, who pushed me to get to know, because she also said that she has to also step away some time. I am also looking at who else. I have also mentored other people who should be able to then engage and be able to do the work, because you can't do everything. You have to have time for yourself. Yes. So part of it is that don't pour from empty cups. Take care of yourself.
Take care of yourself.
You have to take care of yourself.
Such a beautiful reminder, because sometimes when the community work is like, it's your entire existence, you're always like, but I have to help, but I have to show up. So getting to the point where you are actually telling yourself that, yes, I need to show up, but I need to show up for me first, and I'm able to, you know, show up in the world better and just be able to help people better.
Yes.
I think that that's very, very powerful. Talking about just having a community that is holding you whenever you're navigating burnout, and just, you know, also having self-care. But I'd really like to know, apart from, of course, burnout, what are some of the other challenges that you have faced during this entire journey, and how have you been able to navigate that?
One of the things is that sometimes your work can become what you are, and it's a challenge to learn to separate that there's work and there's you, because that you is important for other things in your own personal spaces, like your family, your kids, if you have, right? And the people who you care about in your life. So one of these things is that you have to learn to stop. That there's a space which then people are not buzzing you all the time about certain things, and you're always showing up, because then you start getting drained from the particular process. Another bit is that in terms of the engagement is that when you start doing certain things, the resourcing for the same can become a challenge. We keep on talking about the issues of feminist economies and how then to sustain how then these spaces are supposed to be. So part of it is looking at how then, as we engage even as an institution, how do we then all say that we are able to keep on rowing the boat? Because as you row the boat, it becomes a ship, more people are coming in, and how then you have the collective care to be able to move with all these particular people without then ensuring that you are draining yourself also at different levels. And I think the other bit of the challenge is that it is a challenge to sometimes sustain institutions and sustain people, and it is also important to look at how then at different levels, if you are looking at the institutional capacities, how then do people come in to support you, but then how do you also re-innovate yourself to be able to continue doing the work that you do, so that you are still the same institution, you're still the same people, but you're having new energy and new things to do things differently, because that adaptability sometimes becomes a challenge for many institutions to do. And so that is what is important for me. That's the challenge I've learned, that if you're not adapting to certain things, but do not ensure that as you adapt, you forget who you are. The challenge is that sometimes there are resources which you leave because it changes who you are. You don't become the same institution or person because you compromise about who you are. So those are some of the things which then we can learn to do to navigate these particular challenging times where there are anti-rights movements and there are dwindling resources which are coming. So part of the challenge which we have now is that what do you do differently? And how then do you want to ensure that you keep on doing the work that you do with communities? Yeah.
It's very critical that you have mentioned being able to separate your work from the other facets of your life, because
Yes.
sometimes we get so lost in the work that we do that we actually forget that I have other things going on for me
Yes.
apart from just this, and I need to preserve myself and take care of myself so that I'm able to just show up better in all these other facets of who I am. Yeah.
Yes.
And I also love that you've started the conversation on sustainability and adaptability. What does the movement look like for you? And of course, as KEFEADO itself, and of course the feminism movement as well. Yeah. How does that look like for you in the future? And how do we ensure that, in as much as resources are dwindling and we have the anti-rise and there's so many changes, how do we just ensure that we're still here in the next coming years, you know? And this actually outlives us.
Part of it is that, for example, one of the things is that we do what we are looking at now is that if you're talking about this kind of work, you need to also think about how people can pay you to do the work. Yeah? So part of it is that if you're doing this nature of work, what other type of activities are you going to use if we do facilitation? Can you train? If you're looking at generating knowledge, do research, so that then when you're doing research work, then you get more information on how then you can adapt. So beyond talking about that, when we're doing work, ticking the boxes of monitoring and evaluation, communities have learned to adapt. So thinking like that community member who you went and trained and utilize that information to change their lives. So also see life from the community member who learned about what you trained on. And then let's not talk about training as a talk shop. Utilize that particular knowledge to ensure that then you adapt. Because a lot of communities who we are engaging with have used that knowledge to transform their lives, and they're continuing, sustain. They will tell you, this is the work that we did. We started working with, we have people we started working with 30 years ago, right, when we started. And they are still doing their work within different facets. They've grown into their leadership spaces in different places. Some of them are members of parliament. And that means that they're giving us also other leeways to engage. So that adaptability is ensuring that we do certain things differently, but also then sustaining the issues of having what we call a knowledge hub. And this knowledge hub you control on how then you share that knowledge and then how you utilize that knowledge. So the different streams of income which then we also need to have is also something which you need to think about, because then that will sustain the institution. But then also, as I talk about for example, your team as an institution. If you're an institution which does this work, it ensures that within your work, your team also understands the vision, where you want to go, isn't it? And are strategic thinkers in that path which then you want to navigate together. So as an institution, it's also important to have the same people who are critical thinkers, who also then critique certain things which then we want to do, but also shape that journey. So be people who have innovation and different thoughts as we move. So that is why it's important to mentor, and it is important to then do things when you can. Don't wait. Procrastination messes dreams. Yes.
Powerful. Don't wait. Don't wait. You have had so many wins through all these 25 years, but what was like one of the greatest highlights for you during this journey of your activism?
I think the greatest part is seeing that when you invest in people, that investment growing, and those people actually surpassing the mark, yeah, and then coming back to actually share those particular marks, and even supporting you now as an institution, because then you invested in a space, and they have grown to be what you actually told them that they can be. So when I look at that I think is the greatest win. I'll talk about even young people who we met in school and have been able to grow out of the work we did with them in school years ago, and are now leaders in their own institutions, and using the same methodologies we used to also do their work. So part of it is that when you see that happening, then you say that then it is important to continue investing And even on the feedback you also get from people who then remember that you did something which then spurred their thoughts in different directions. That is what then gives you the ability to continue engaging at different levels.
I love that you are actually able to see your legacy right here. Yes. Like you're not waiting to happen later on.
When you die,
like you're able to watch it unfold before you.
Yes.
And you know, like you've been in the halls of the African Union, but then you're very robust in organizing at the grassroots levels. Like, how do you manage to just merge the two, from global activism and global spaces to, you know, the local spaces as well?
The personal is very political. That is just a space to learn new things, but to push an agenda. But if you cannot transform all this work at your own community level, then it becomes a challenge in what we say, that boardroom or conference conversations. It is important to get knowledge and then transform that knowledge into the communities where you work with, because that is where the social change is supposed to be. So if you're looking at saying that we do work from a transformative approach, that we use a social approach to do the change, it is the households methodology which you use, that is what then you see the change. So impact comes when a personal at individual level, somebody makes personal choices and changes. So even when you're talking about the global, that person must interpret that if you're talking about laws, this is how I can utilize these laws in my own household. And then at that personal level, then I will be able to share it within my household and then take it to my community. So it is important for us to continue in doing that. And then we do that because governance states that communities are the ones who push their agenda. If community members are not participating in governance processes, like right now Kenya is talking about the budget, then you continue to have bad systems. So it is important for us to ensure that a number of community members are awoke, that there's information happening here. Kenya is a signatory to this. You deserve to get this particular bit because you're a taxpayer. So that is a conversation which then must be done at this particular level. Get what Kenya says up, and reflect at the community level where the community member is feeling what we are saying up, and then tell people that, okay, if you're saying this, then you must have a piece of that pie. Yes, that is what is important. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. So I know that just like other many young women, we really, really admire you and we look up to you so much. And I know there's someone who's always wondering, how do I get to that? Because like, you know, whenever someone is watching you from up there, like you are, I don't know how to describe you really. I wouldn't have the perfect words, but you are this powerful, incredible creature. You see, when you mentioned the lake, I envision the lake and how beautiful and powerful she is, and just what a source of life she is to every single one of us. I think I would call you that to so many of us, and to the movement in general, in Kenya and beyond. What kind of advice would you give to a young person, an African feminist who's up and coming and really wants to do the work that you do as well?
It's not easy, but be persistent, never give up. And one of the things is that your consistency will pay. Even when it is tough, never let go of your dream. It will pay in the long run. Sometimes so many challenges come and you don't see where you're reaching out. It would be great if then, as you reach out to maybe other younger women in your different spaces, to then have a space where we say that you have a rest. And then you gain energy from those particular spaces. Those spaces are not enough. And that's why we are looking at, remember we talked about the Siwindes.
Yes.
Because those were holding spaces where you'd be able to reach out to other people like you and different from you to engage. So it is important for us. I think it's a challenge now because of the global trends, but I think we can still have those particular spaces. And for older women, it is also important to continue the mentorship. And how then, as you mentor and get your mentees, that you also have to ensure that you are able to give your mentees the opportunity to also take their path. Because for young women, somebody can mentor you, and sometimes you're not even not supposed to talk to any other person because you're a mentee. That one then does not mean that you're doing good leadership. So if we are able to do that, then we'll have many young women getting to know in which spaces they can get in, when they can get out, who then they can engage with, and then working with these particular young women at different levels. So the mentorship means that it's not that you, as a young woman, the only thing you can do is to carry bags. No. You also have to be in those particular spaces to experience the issues of leadership. So do not carry people's bags. That's what I can tell you.
Umesema hadi sisi mentees unatupatia standards, like do not carry bags.
Do not carry people's bags. People can carry their own bags, isn't it? Go there and learn. Go there and listen. Sit at that table and have a voice. Yes. Do not be put there to carry bags and write notes only. Ensure that you also have a voice. That is when you'll be able to shape the agenda.
It's beautiful because then it's bringing us back to the conversation of us also being very intentional as we choose our mentors.
Yes.
And also the mentors who are allowing themselves to be chosen or who are choosing mentees, also putting themselves in a place where I'm opening up space, I'm opening up room for all of us to thrive. Because, you know, like when you were reflecting earlier, you were saying like your biggest win is just being able to see the people that you mentored being able to take up so much space, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Takes us back to feminism, as you were talking about feminism. So now, because it's Sister Darling and we always have to do love letters, if you were to write a love letter to an African feminist, what would the first line look like, or the first paragraph?
Talk about my dear love, because it is your love letter. When you're writing a love letter, please tell yourself about what you love about that person. So always affirm yourself. So in everything you'll talk about to the dear lovely person that you are. You're the sweetheart of that particular person. You're the heart of that particular person. A love letter means that you have to love that particular person to give that person the best. You cannot give someone who you don't love the worst. So part of it is that what is your best? And even when things are challenging, how do you then ensure that you continue to love this person and grow with this person despite the challenges? Forgive also. There's so many times where we don't forgive for things which happened, and you hold on to anger and you hold on to hate. Forgive and let go, because that is bad energy which you do not need. And when you forgive, you open up space for more to come in. And then also give yourself an opportunity to learn that failure is not the last hurdle. It is just something else which teaches you something else to do, and how then you can use that particular lesson to then love yourself more, because then you have grown in how life can teach you certain things. So that love letter is what is important to a younger person, that is who you become with all your wins, all your losses. This particular person who you become is this amazing person who then will always remember those lessons learned from certain things, and the people who you let go, or sometimes also let go. Sometimes you hold on to people and things which then hold you back. Learn to let go and move on to have new experiences with different people. Yes.
So beautiful. Like I was feeling like you were just talking to me, my dear love. My dear love. So just in case someone wants to find you or find KEFEADO, where can they reach you?
We have a satellite office which is in Migosi, behind Migosi Primary School. So that is where we are at. But the space where we want you to find us is in our hub in Nyamonye. Nyamonye is in Bondo. That place where you can find us means that it is a space we are co-creating with communities. so that it's a lasting space for us to do different things, so that then we can engage at different levels. But online, you can also find us online in our websites, in our Instagram spaces, but we'd want to move away from just online spaces, which sometimes can be deceiving, because perceptions of what you look like online might not be the thing. And we hope that we can meet at our hub in Nyamonye, because that is the space we are creating for continuity and sustainability.
Awesome. You have to agree with me that listening to Easter, nobody else deserves to be called Mama Africa like she does. Like how she draws inspiration from our people, our culture, our beliefs, our values, and who we are is just so beautiful. And I think that that's so powerful to just ensure that we integrate that every single time that we are programming. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you have had such a wonderful time, just as I have. This has been the Sister Darling podcast, leaving no sister behind.
Let me hold your hand, sister darling. Let me hold you close. Don't be afraid. I will sail the waves of you, sister darling.